Facebook does not want you to hear what she has to say. I dare say China probably doesn't want you to hear what she has to say. But we are going to get the truth. And we're going to get the truth starting now. Why is it that Facebook is so desperate to prevent this witness from telling what she knows? What is it that they are so afraid of? Well, we're going to find out today. And I think that we've already got a sense of it. Sarah Wynne Williams knows the truth about Facebook.
You can't segregate data. It would have American data, it would have Chinese user data, and it would be on Chinese soil.
So I want to just be clear about this. Here in this document, Facebook is talking about making Chinese user data available to the Chinese government because they're going to store that data in China. Is that correct?
Correct.
But when you store that data in China, Americans who exchange messages or other information with Chinese Facebook users, that would mean the Chinese government could get access to the American data as well. Is that correct?
Through the POP servers, potentially, yes.
And Facebook was willing to take that risk?
Yes, there was a lot of discussion about this, and ultimately, yes.
I mean, this is extraordinary.
Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Today we've got a special breakdown for you, and it's about one of the most shocking pieces of testimony I've ever heard in a U.S. Senate hearing. The topic? Meta, formerly Facebook, and their deep, troubling ties with communist China. This was a bombshell that could change everything we know about big tech and their involvement with foreign governments. And trust me, when you hear this testimony, you'll be just as outraged as I am. Senator Josh Hawley, a true patriot, held a hearing exposing Meta's stunning complicity with China. Yes, that's right, the very same company that controls most of the information we see on the internet. But here's the thing, folks, it's not just about censorship on American soil. It's about something much bigger. A betrayal of American values and a sellout to the Chinese Communist Party. You're going to want to hear this. So let's dive right into tea after the video. First off, let's talk about who blew the whistle here. Sarah Wynne Williams, a former executive at Facebook who worked closely with the likes of Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg. She wasn't just any employee, this woman was at the top of the food chain. And now, after all the intimidation tactics Facebook threw her way, lawsuits, gag orders, threats of financial ruin, she's exposing it all. And what she's saying is chilling. So, Facebook claims they don't do business in China, right? Well, according to this whistleblower, that's a straight-up lie. Facebook has a $18.3 billion business in China. They've been working with China for years, breaking into the market with their Oculus VR business and other products. They've even partnered with Tencent, one of the biggest tech companies in China, and, get this, they've set up employees in China. Yet, the mainstream media and the globalists want us to believe that Facebook has been neutral when it comes to China. That's absolute garbage.
Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
Let's just take a look here at the documents. Here's some meeting notes taken shortly after a conversation with a Mr. Chow, who's a Communist Chinese Party member, a government official. Here, Mr. Chow asks Facebook, it says to Facebook, that they want Mr. Guo's Facebook page dealt with. The notes say that Chow wants Facebook in China, but there are others who don't, so we Facebook need to take measures and do more in such situations to demonstrate we can address mutual interests. And then they go on to list, here's what we could do. We could do nothing, we could say we can do something, or we can do even more than expected, but we need to provide a response to the Chinese Communist Party on what we can do. So here we have evidence of high-level contacts between Chinese Communist Party officials and Facebook asking for this dissident's page to be taken down. Facebook acknowledging this pressure, saying we need to do something if we want to get the party's cooperation, the government's cooperation. And what happened next?
Well, Senator Hawley, one thing the Chinese Communist Party and Mark Zuckerberg share is that they want to silence their critics. I can say that from a personal experience. So I think they came to the right man. This led to a series of events where eventually this man on American soil was kicked off the platform.
So in April of 2017, following these conversations, Facebook takes down the profile, bans it, of Mr. Guo. Then in September, they make that ban permanent. Now here's the really interesting thing. When Facebook's general counsel was asked about this directly under oath in a Senate Intelligence Committee hearing, he sang a different tune. Senator Rubio asked him directly, was there any pressure from the Chinese government to block his account? Was there any pressure to block his account? The General Counsel, Mr. Stretch, no, Senator. We reviewed a report on that account and analyzed it through regular channels using regular procedures. Was this truthful testimony, Ms. Williams?
No, Senator.
It's in fact an outright lie, is it not?
It is, Senator.
We just saw the documentation. Facebook received not just a request, Facebook received direct pressure from the Chinese Communist Party and bowed to it and discussed it internally and planned it and then lied about it to Congress. Let's talk about what else they've been able to do and willing to do in order to get this access to the Chinese market. Let's look at some more meeting notes. Here's a readout of a group of Facebook engineers offering to create a censorship regime that will allow Facebook to block all traffic the Chinese Communist Party doesn't want. Phase 0, this is an internal chat. Phase 0, we identify all traffic that are currently blocked in China and we, Facebook, block them. This is a test for us to see whether we can actually identify all traffic from China. And then the chat continues, yes, good way to build trust. And another conversant says, great stuff, guys, let's do it. What do they, give us some context here, Ms. Wynne Williams. What are they talking about doing here? When they say block all content that China wants, we, Facebook, do it for them. What are they talking about?
They're talking about activating their censorship tools on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party.
So Facebook creates censorship tools that will allow them to assume the burden, if you like, of censorship, where they will do all of the censoring that the Chinese government was doing. Facebook would do it on their behalf. Is that right?
That's my understanding.
And here you have Facebook employees celebrating it. Good way to build trust. They mean build trust with the Communist Chinese Party, right?
Correct, Senator.
And great stuff, guys. Let's do it. Meaning they greenlit this and went forward to see if they could make it happen. Is that accurate?
That's my understanding, Senator.
All of this, let's be clear, for a murderous regime in China, the most barbaric, most evil regime on the face of the planet, and our free speech champion, Mark Zuckerberg, is here with his team of engineers actively working to make Facebook censor on their behalf. Let me ask you this. What about user data, Ms. Wynne Williams? Facebook has said publicly many times, we would never compromise user data. It's a red line in the sand. We'd never do that. Never, never, never. Was Facebook ever willing to share user data with the Chinese Communist Party?
Yes, Senator.
In fact, they had a plan for that, didn't they? Here's some more documents, internal documents. Update, I spoke with the China team yesterday. They flagged a potential complication arising from our negotiations with the Chinese government. I emphasize this is a Facebook document now. These are Facebook executives. In exchange for the ability to do operations in China, Facebook will agree to grant the Chinese government access to Chinese user data. There it is in black and white. Facebook will agree to grant the Chinese government access to Chinese user data, including Hong Kongese user data. And then they talk about they're going to have to get their Hong Kong citizens to re-agree to terms of service so they can slide this right by them. This is extraordinary. Can I just ask you, Ms. Wynne Williams, was Americans' user data ever compromised? Or they ever planned to compromise American user data in any way? Do you know?
One of the challenges with the servicing a market as big as China was the internet infrastructure that would underpin that. So I mentioned the cable that they joined between the US and China, and that would be very helpful. But in servicing this market. But it would still mean that the service would be slow. So they contemplated using POP servers. And POP servers is a technical data set that brings the data closer to the end user. The challenge with POP servers is that you can't segregate data. It would have American data, it would have Chinese user data, and it would be on Chinese soil.
So I want to just be clear about this. Here in this document, Facebook is talking about making Chinese user data available to the Chinese government because they're going to store that data in China. Is that correct?
Correct.
But when you store that data in China, Americans who exchange messages or other information with Chinese Facebook users, that would mean the Chinese government could get access to the American data as well. Is that correct?
Through the POP servers, potentially, yes.
And Facebook was willing to take that risk?
Yes, there was a lot of discussion about this, and ultimately, yes.
I mean, this is extraordinary. This is exactly contrary to what Facebook has represented for years. Willing to build data centers, store data in China. They are willing explicitly to give the Chinese government access to it. And if that means that American user data is also compromised, they're willing to do that too. All for profits in China. There was virtually nothing they weren't willing to do. Chairman Grassley, Ms. Wynne-Williams, let me ask you a little bit more about the censorship tools that you've been asked about today, you've testified about, that were actually deployed in Hong Kong and Taiwan. And let's just, if we can, let's just look again at the privacy team email. And not that one. That one. Yeah, so this is, and just so members of the press understand, the committee's in possession of this document. We have blacked out, as you can see, we've blacked out the names of individuals here, but in the documents we have those names. Of course, we'll follow all appropriate legal procedures, but just so the press understands, the committee is committed to doing a full investigation. We do understand and know who the people are on this chain. We can see who they are, and we can see the full course of the discussion. But I just want to emphasize something here. The update is they spoke with the China team. They flagged a potential course of potential complication of course of negotiations with the Chinese government. Let's just stop there for a second. Someone pointed out to you that Mark Zuckerberg testified under oath that he didn't know what the Chinese government's terms would be to operate Facebook in China because they were banned, quote unquote, in China. So he just had no idea. He was saying this as late as 2017, 2018. He just had no idea what the terms would be. That's just categorically false, isn't it?
Absolutely, Senator.
And this email shows that it is false, correct?
Correct.
In fact, what this email shows is Facebook is in very regularly close contact with members of the Chinese government, down to specifying how they want the censorship tools to work. They're giving feedback on it, back and forth and back and forth. And here they've agreed on a set of censorship tools to deploy in Hong Kong, down to the fact that they say we're going to have to actually re-TOS. Does that mean terms of service?
Correct.
So in other words, they're going to have to push out to Hong Kong users a new click thing for them to click on, which they won't, of course, really understand or know because it's almost impossible to decipher. But in fact, what they're doing is it's allowing Facebook to stand up new censorship tools on behalf of the Chinese government. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, here's another interesting point. Back in 2012, the FTC here in this country, the FTC entered a consent decree with Facebook about privacy. Do you remember, Ms. Wynne-Williams, this would have been early on in your time at the company, but do you remember roughly any of the terms of that FTC consent decree? Because they are relevant here.
I do, Senator. They were intended to prevent Meta from deceiving people about the extent to which they collect and share their data.
Yes, so the part of the order is, and let me just quote, Facebook shall, quote, shall not misrepresent in any manner, expressly or by implication, the extent to which it maintains the privacy or security of covered information, end quote, which is user data. Now, Facebook is under a consent decree with the FTC on this basis, and yet they are deliberately misrepresenting across the world the security of user data. They are negotiating with the Chinese government to turn over user data, grant the Chinese government access to Chinese user data, including the Hong Kongese, including Taiwan, and yet they're representing to American government.
What we're seeing here is a company that's more concerned with profit than the safety and well-being of the American people. They don't care about the American worker or the American way of life. They care about one thing: money. And this is where it gets even worse, folks. Meta, Facebook's parent company, has been bending over backwards to please the Chinese Communist Party. They've been setting up censorship systems that would make Orwell roll in his grave. Facebook executives were actively building tools that would allow the Chinese government to censor content they don't like. Now, let me tell you something. This is not just about political correctness. This is about a free speech issue at its core. The very same people that lecture us about free speech here in the United States are the same ones that are working hand in hand with the Chinese government to silence dissidents. Facebook is actively working to suppress voices in China, and they've even been pressured by the Chinese Communist Party to take down the pages of Chinese dissidents. People who have every right to speak out. What's even more disgusting? They did this on US soil to an individual living in America. So when Mark Zuckerberg claims he's a free speech warrior, remember this. His actions prove otherwise. Now let's talk about the lies. Facebook has repeatedly lied to Congress and the American people about their ties to China. In one of the most outrageous examples, Facebook's general counsel testified under oath before Congress, denying any pressure from China to censor or take down content. They straight up lied to the Senate. And when the documents came out, it was clear that Zuckerberg and his team were actively collaborating with Chinese officials to censor content. Folks, this isn't a mistake, it's an agenda. And it's happening right under our noses. And let me just point this out, the Chinese Communist Party is one of the most oppressive regimes in history. These people are not just censoring social media, they're locking up dissidents, forcing their citizens into re-education camps, and committing atrocities against their own people. So, when Facebook chooses to collaborate with this kind of regime for profit, it's not just about business. It's about choosing authoritarianism over freedom. And that's something every patriot should be furious about. But wait folks, there's more. It gets even darker. One of the most terrifying revelations in this hearing is that Facebook was willing to hand over user data to the Chinese government. Yes, you heard that right. The company that claims to protect our privacy, the company that constantly reassures us that our data is safe, has been talking about giving Chinese authorities access to American user data. This isn't a theory, it's documented. There are internal documents from Facebook executives discussing how they could share data with the Chinese government, including data from Hong Kong and Taiwan. This is the very same company that tells you your data is protected while they're making deals to sell your information to one of America's greatest enemies. They don't care about privacy. They care about profit. Now, we can't forget about another issue that was raised during this hearing, Facebook's exploitation of vulnerable people for profit. They've been targeting teens, particularly young girls, during moments of emotional distress. And who are they doing this for? Advertisers. It's disgusting, folks. They've been looking for any opportunity to sell their platform to advertisers, even at the expense of mental health. They're preying on teenagers' insecurities, using their emotional turmoil as a way to boost their bottom line. And they're doing this knowingly, understanding that these vulnerable people could suffer from the pressure and the influence of their platforms. As a right-wing patriot, this is exactly the kind of moral rot we should be fighting against. Facebook isn't just exploiting our data, they're exploiting our children. And as a father, that makes me furious. Let's be real, folks. Mark Zuckerberg has lied to Congress, lied to the American people, and lied to his employees. And now he's trying to reinvent himself as a champion of free speech? Are you kidding me? This guy is the same one who worked with the Chinese government to silence dissidents. He's the same one who censored stories in the US because they didn't fit the narrative. He's a hypocrite. He's playing a game to save face, but we all know the truth. This is a man who will do whatever it takes to get power, and right now he's playing both sides, pretending to be the good guy in America while he's in bed with one of the world's most authoritarian regimes. We need to hold Zuckerberg and Facebook accountable. We need to make sure that no company, especially one as powerful as Facebook, can work against our interests and betray our values. It's time for Congress to step up and hold them to the fire. It's time for patriots like us to demand the truth and take action. Well, that's all I've got for today, folks. If you're as outraged as I am about what's going on, then it's time to take a stand. Share this video, talk to your friends, and let's make sure we expose these big tech companies for the corrupt, power-hungry giants they are. Don't let them control the narrative. Stand up for our American values and let's hold these people accountable. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. As always, stay strong, stay patriotic, and let's take back control of our country. Until next time, God bless America.